Welcome back to a new episode for Authentication Services by One Identity. In this video we're going to show you a couple of things concerning the policy management for Sudo files using a policy manager configured in our demo environment we have used before. So let's have a look on it. If you just go with me to my management station, you're going to see that there is something like the management console for Unix. The management console for Unix is a web-based client or console, as the name states, that can be used to manage your environment with a very nice point and click. So once you sign into your management console, you have a nice little graphical interface you can use to manage your environment very easily. So let's have a look on our hosts in our environment. Now you see that I have the address. Now this has a different name and it's joined to domain. That's all fine. And now it is a primary server for Sudo. The primary server for Sudo means it holds a centralized Sudoers file that can be handed out or validated for requests coming from systems that are connected to that primary server. And of course, if you see primary server, you instantly would ask, oh, what's about the secondary one? Yes, there can be a secondary one, but I don't have configured one because the purpose for the secondary one is just to give backup in case the primary fails. Of course, you should do this in your productive environment. I haven't done this here, but it's very easy to set up in the same way as before. And this was just the thing we have done when we installed the package or for this primary server via the command line, so shown in a different series of this video. Okay, so let's switch back for what you can do with that now and how this is really used. But because I don't have anything installed here, I'm going to switch to the other Sudoers or policy servers I have available here. And one of the things is here I have something here like it is called PM policy for Sudo. And this, of course, is my primary server for that Sudo management for the connected systems. And it is serving something that is called Sudo policy. Yeah, that's not the best name for it, maybe. It is just a policy name. It does not have anything particular to do with that. So it is just my name for my Sudo policy. It's called Sudo-policy. Okay, I'm going to think about this maybe for later environments. And of course, if you have a primary server, you need some kind of systems that talk to that server. And all these servers need to be equipped with something that's called a Sudo plugin. And the Sudo plugin then is linked to the policy, because you can join that system then to that policy, and the policy then can determine where the policy server sits and all fits together. So the Sudo plugin is really a plugin that you install on your systems that should use it. It is contained in the appropriate download for the privilege manager for Sudo and can be installed on the systems locally via the appropriate install commands you can find in the manual. And the Sudo plugin is really a plugin to the Sudo command available on your systems. If you have a pretty much modern version of Sudo running on your systems, usually when you execute a command with sudo control, it goes to the local Sudoers files on your system. If you install the plugin, this validation request, if you're allowed to run that command with elevated privileges, will not elevate it via looking into your local file. Instead, it will be sent to the policy server, it will be validated at the policy server, and the result will be sent back to you, and the Sudo program can decide if it grants access to the appropriate command or not. That's by principle how it works. And once you have done this, you can just go for this nice little interface and you can go to policy, and you can then open your current version of the Sudo policy. And now the policy is loaded from the centralized policy server to my client and is displayed here. Okay, and now you see a standard Sudoers file. So it has all the standard stuff inside here and something like that. There are a couple of stuff that is maybe specific to the authentication services. Something here you have is log input and log output that we're going to use later. And of course it tells you everything else, like whatever environment variables and appropriate commands like whatever members of the wheel group and so on and so on. Or you have you see this percentage sign with a colon and the Unix group. This is a Unix enabled group coming from the directory and whatever you have. And you may want to have some kind of special commands serviced via the sudo files. For instance, you have a dedicated command for the user bootcamp1 to be able to execute the cat command to look into the var log secure file, which is not able by default. So that is something that is validated through your policy server. So for the executing server, it's pretty much the same. How you execute this is for the user or for the user using that file. It's pretty much of no importance how this sudo file gets evaluated. It's just interested in am I able to run the command or not. So pretty easy. So let's get back to our host in this case. So in this case, I have some kind of sudo plugin, and this is pm4sudo. This is my host that is joined to the policy sudo policy, which is then served by my primary server pm policy for sudo. So more or less what to do now. So in this case, I just want to use my system. So that is my demo environment again. And as I said, I have a client that is the pm4sudo. Here's pm4sudo. So I first log into my client, and I'm gonna log in as my bootcamp1 user. Okay, now I'm logged in as the bootcamp1 user, and the thing I want to do is just want to have bin cat var log secure. You should give it the right syntax. Permission denied. I'm not by default allowed to access this file. Of course, now I can switch to sudo. So I execute the same command with sudo control. Give it a password. And here's the content of my sudo file. That's how it works. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. So we have played around a little bit with the sudo file and the policy servers and how to execute sudos. But an additional value you're going to achieve using authentication services from one identity is that you still have extensive logging. If you remember, there is this log input and log output directive that you can insert into the sudo files. And this sudo file is then controlled and distributed and consulted when executing sudo commands. And what this directive is doing is that you can now have a look on the input and the output and on the keystrokes that were being used when you execute that command. I'm going to show you this with the help of Management Console for Unix. So this is our Management Console for Unix again, and we now have something that is called policy. When you click to the policy, this is the one we have used in our demo. So it was just this execution for the stuff that was for the bootcamp1 user, and as we have seen, our bootcamp1 user was only allowed to get access to that file via sudo. And if you just switch to this little tab called event logs, you can now have access to the log file that is recorded on the policy server. One of the things that authentication services is offering you, or the privilege access suite for Unix and the privilege manager to be exact, then it is this nice little recording feature that you have here on the policy server. So if you just go for something that you want to know, and today we have the 19th of September. Give me a second to adjust the time frame a little bit. And fine. And now you see that I have some entry of a positive stuff, or some entry of a successful run of a sudo file, of a sudo command that was controlled by the policy server here. And you see that there's a little link on the right that means replay keystroke log, and if I click on that, it's gonna fetch all the data that was recorded to my client. And if I click on this play button here, it gives me the exact representation of the stuff that was shown on the screen when I was entering the command, including all the stuff when I was starting to execute it, and you can see what the real stuff was. Here's the command listed, bin cat var log secure. Here is the host where it has been logged. Here's the host where it has been run on. Here's the run user. Here's the executing user, and so on and so on. So you have all the reporting functionality, or you have all the logging here on that server using the privilege manager for Sudo and the inbuilt recording and keystroke recording functionality. And of course you can do something like reporting with that, but this is a different story we're going to discuss later. And the same applies if you're not using the privilege manager for Sudo, but for the privilege manager for Unix. It uses the same console and it uses the same methodology that is built in the product as well. So it looks pretty much similar.